Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Makes smart card. Software card, end of it. It looks like an interesting way to turn over on. Maybe a possible collaboration between us and Microsoft. Between us and Jeff Blue. And, well, I heard some more talking to Pascal earlier on. We'll give some more. Yeah, let's give it another 2 minutes and start at 1:35.
The past several months, and it's a kind of a new way of considering smart cards and trying to do some kind of a different computing model with smart cards. So it's a joint work with other people. David is my boss. Well, he's leading the crypto and security group at JAMPAS, and David Poncheval is teaches at the ENS, École Normale Supérieure in Paris. He does mainly security proof, and I do also the same kind of stuff he does, but for JAMPAS. And Benoit is someone that has been hired 2 years ago, and he's carrying out a PhD thesis while working at JAMPAS. So actually what we're going to focus on is actually von Neumann architecture, which is I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. So in von Neumann's architecture, you have basically a program memory in which the program is stored. So all the instructions are stored there. Hi. And you have a processing unit here, and there's also maybe a random number generator, which is accessible from the microprocessor, and a couple of different working memories, the RAM and the non-volatile memory here. And of course, an I/O port by which the microprocessor can communicate with the external world. So in this this very basic model, you have here, the program is located in ROM, and the microprocessor is fed with instructions coming from the ROM. So what we're going to focus on here is the idea according to which somebody could try to modify the contents of the ROM. So instead of having some kind of inherently authenticated ROM, we're in the model in which there could, be some unknown instructions into the program memory there. And of course, to make it cryptographically relevant, we have the problem of having a key, cryptographic key material into the non-volatile memory of the device. And so the goal of an attacker here would be, by having access to the program memory, the goal of the attacker would be to either guess some information about the key or to modify the value of the key. So we have in the threat model here, we have a code issuer, which is the party that generates authenticate genuine programs, and we have a device here which just receives some instructions from the external world, and the key is there. And so the question is there something we can do about that? Is there a way of authenticating the contents of the code to make sure that it's actually coming from the code issuer and not from some attacker here? So this can be very. It is easy to formalize this problem with adequate words. So like integrity, for instance. So we have the problem of reaching the property of integrity on the key, meaning that the key will not be modified by the attacker, and as well the confidentiality, meaning that the key should remain private under a chosen program attack, which is basically the way the attacker attacks the device by modifying instructions and putting instruction of his choice. So what we would like to achieve is that actually these properties of key integrity and confidentiality would be met. So we're looking for a system in which we can optimally reach these two properties. And so what we come up with is a system in which these two properties there are provably reached. Yes?
It's the case that you cannot modify the key as opposed to whether you prefer if the check was modified. You can't, for example, erase all of non-fault memory.
No, the attacker shouldn't be able to do this, to do anything. Yeah, exactly. Because of fault attacks, it could just modify some part of the key, and then this would open the doors to fault attacks. So the application of what we're going to come up with is actually what we call the externalized microprocessor. Okay, the XMP, and the XMP is basically a computing device on its own. It's like a smart card, but it contains absolutely no ROM at all. There is no program that resides into this device. So actually, all the instructions that the device is going to execute are coming from the external world, meaning they are coming from a reader, for instance, or an ATM or whatever is connected to the device. So the code is entirely exported to the external world, and we still meet these two criteria of confidentiality and integrity of the crypto material embedded into the non-volatile memory. And of course, there are a lot of specific advantages of doing so, meaning basically that you don't have to mask the smart card anymore, because of course there is no program inside the smart card. So you can just if you discover a bug into your OS routines, for instance, it's very easy to patch, because you just have to upload a new version of the code inside the terminals. You don't have to replace all the smart cards on the ground. So it's far less expensive. And of course, the same for code size. Actually, the biggest ROM ever embedded into a smart card is 256 kilobytes of code. So it may sound weird for people working in the software company, but for people dealing with smart cards, it's already a huge amount of space, right? So of course, having an OS plus a lot of other, clumsy software components everywhere, it's very hard to put them in such a small amount of memory. So here we have no limitation whatsoever about the code size.
Can I ask the security program can at least keep track of versioning information so that we can play back an old known buggy version of some code?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, certainly. Yes, certainly feasible. And of course, we have also a total compatibility with any kind of application, because there is nothing left in the device that would refrain compatibility from happening. There is nothing except a couple of memories and a processing unit. So there is nothing personalizing the device so that it could, be incompatible with any kind of application. So this is a smart card, basically. So we have exactly the same hardware components as before, and this is basically what's in the ROM. So we have, of course, OS and commands and system calls and everything, but we have also we have to be compatible with the Java world, so that we have usually advanced smart cards do have a Java virtual machine on board that allows you to execute applets on board. And of course, you need a linker and a loader to load the applets, and a verifier to make static verification of the applets. And then there is a firewall, and you need also a garbage collector and remote method invocation modules, and a lot of other things like communication protocols, crypto APIs, whatever. So actually, all this has to stand in a ROM. So what we come up with is actually a system in which we have exactly the same thing, but all the programs are actually located outside of the device. So we have here a kind of other interface between the microprocessor and the external world, which is a kind of hardware dedicated interface by which all the instructions come into the device and get executed by the microprocessor. So everything remains the same. We have an I/O port which is in communication with the reader, and now there's another channel here for instructions. So yes.
One limitation of what project was the size of the RAM. That limitation is processors long.
They're slow because of the power consumption. You have to give a very strong limitation on the clock. So
And this is not going to make it slower.
it's not going to change really here.
It's going to get worse because getting a bit from off-chip always costs more energy than getting a bit from on-chip.
Certainly. Okay. But I would say the nominal clock speed would be about 20 megahertz for regular small car.
So does this make Does this take that into account? Does this?
No, it's just these are the theoretical aspects of the thing, right? So we don't have a real silicon prototype so far. So there are many engineering considerations that do not appear in what I'm talking about.
So this is a conceptual model, conceptual overview.
Yeah, exactly. It's the theoretical blueprint. So okay, so again, so the architecture we're proposing is actually it processes authenticated programs of arbitrary size. Okay, we have proposed a toy language in order to demonstrate how the system works. But it's fully customizable, so we could have it's kind of a Java-based language, which is an elementary language, but we could have chosen something else, like a regular assembly language with registers and everything. But okay. And so we have an RSA-based authentication mechanism, and there is also a secret key variant based on the Max, which is extremely fast, and which is quite a little bit trickier than the one based on RSA, but which is extremely fast. And we also provide a well-defined security model in which we model the behavior of the attacker, and try to reach the security goals. So we have a security proof, which is I think I'm going to skip that part, but if you want me to get into details, there's no problem. So the programming language, it's actually a very simple language. So a program is simply a sequence of instructions, and we have very natural instructions. So we have here an operand stack, which is simply RAM cells, and we have the RAM there, the non-volatile memory, and we can just load and store data from and in these two memories. So for instance, if I process a load X here is some kind of immediate address in RAM, then I'm going to simply to load some data from the RAM on the top of the operand stack. And there is also a load RNG here to read data from the RNG, and load and store for the data port. And so it's some kind of a like language. It's a very simple language. And if you want to process some arithmetic instructions, well, you have, if you do XOR, for example, basic XOR here, you just put your two operands on top of the stack, and when you're executing the XOR simply pops the two topmost elements, and the XOR is computed, and then the result is pushed onto the operand stack back. So it's a very simple language. We could have chosen something else, but all right. So here we have a bunch of instructions. This is dynamic semantics of the language. It's very simple. It's trivial, in fact. And I here means the program counter. So it's just the index of the instructions of the program being computed. So there's also a couple of instructions allowing you to play with the control flow. So if L here means L is an immediate address in the code, and what it does is that it compares the topmost stack element with 0, and if it is 0, then nothing is done. But if it is something which is different from 0, then you just jump to address L in the code. All right. So it's very simple. All right. Same thing here with get static and put static, which are the load and store instructions for the non-volatile memory. So it's like so if we tried simply to have an open execution of the device, how would it work? Well, it's very simple. So the XMP, our externalized device, would simply initialize the program counter to 1, okay, and query all the instructions. Well, a tow instruction means an instruction coming from the outside world. So here, the device would require from the reader the instruction number I, which and then the external terminal would send the instruction requested to the device. The device would execute it and then move back. So of course it's completely insecure.
Just in the
Yes.
previous slide, which you want to go back to. You don't have any operations for doing address computation, for doing address computation and so on.
Indeed.
Is that inherent or just purposeful?
Yes, it's actually a number problem. In fact, the question of jumping to computed addresses.
I was thinking of data addresses first. I should have asked about controller addresses first. But go on. But both of those are problems.
No, actually, the fact that you compute the address in RAM where you're going to load or store some data, it's
Load and store outside of it.
yeah, but it's with immediate addresses in RAM. But you could still add some instructions into this instruction set by which you could access some computed address, dynamically computed address, and it's securizable. It's feasible. But for jumps,
That's one more from that.
yes, correct. So it's yes, correct. But the question of jumping into computed addresses into the code seems not to be secure. It seems hard. It's an open problem now, but it seems hard to securize the system if you allow that kind of instructions. So again, in this open execution, it's very easy to do a lot of things. Like for instance, okay, give me your keys and put them on the I/O data port, and I'm going to read them. So there's nothing you can do about that. Your device is not secure. So a very natural approach would consist in splitting the code into a series of instructions or a block of instructions, and then to assign to these blocks. And so there's some kind of a crypto compilation time at which the program is generated. And then if you use the array, for instance, with some padding function mu here, we could just, assign each and every instruction of the program by just using a padding, an array set plus padding function, and we would verify the signature of instructions on the fly. And yes.
What does that do to your speed and your overhead for doing all that crypto work?
I didn't get the question.
What does it do to your speed and the complexity or the overhead to do all that crypto work?
Presumably,
in comparison with what?
What you're not actually going to do this.
Well, if it's in comparison with the context in which you don't do anything on the code, you just read instructions, execute them. Of course, here we're going to have to verify some things, so we're going to spend a little, more time than you
think
would
add to it. If an 8 or 16-bit instruction becomes 1024, it's a major expansion.
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry?
No, but this is the basic approach. I'm going to talk about more tricky things.
And the presumption here is that the decryption and verification takes place in hardware. There's not a program to do that, so that
No, it's
that doesn't
indeed
count as wrong?
it's hardwired into the device. It's made in hardware, so it should be done quite transparently for the user.
I just asked one more question about your attack model. Sorry. So let's call the sequence of instructions that receive a trace. Is it presumably the attacker could, in fact, substitute some prefix of a trace for a real trace?
Exactly.
And you're not defending against that attack, or you're not? Or you're challenging that?
We're probably secure against that kind of attack. Yes.
So, for example, someone who simply had a real program with real authentication but simply stopped sending you instructions after a while. You defend against that attack?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was saying that, okay. Okay?
Every instruction fetched externally, there's no caching, it's not loaded.
No, it's just the approach. Of course, you could, if you want to build a prototype, you could use a cache or use a caching mechanism for receiving instructions. But this is the theoretical aspect of the thing. So it's not. Maybe you can, if you will, you can add a cache, of course. But it's not the point here. The point here is how to make the device secure, which is the first thing to take into account before trying to build anything. So.
Just one more silly question.
Sure.
Here you're not signing the instructions with any information about which program it is, right? Presumably,
that was what I was talking about. So, all right. So actually, here, if you want to sign instruction by instruction, you're going to have to put the index of this instruction into the signature. Why? Because of course, an attacker could simply permute two instructions, and it would be undetected.
About mixing instructions in different
Exactly. So this is something else. An attacker could still mix instructions from one program to the other, so that it could replace, for example, the 14th opcode of some GSM program by 14th opcode of another program. So it's kind of a mixture attack. So to throttle against these attacks, we just add some kind of a program identifier into the signatures, so that actually each and every program is given an ID, and this ID is embedded into the non-volatile memory of the device, so that actually if some program tries to be executed on the device, if there is no corresponding ID in memory, then the device just refuses executing it.
So you can't, for example, issue new programs that the target runs?
Yes, you can, but you have to
use the old ID.
You have to create the ID inside the device before executing that program.
Oh, I see.
So you have to run some OS, system call.
An existing program will
Exactly. So you can change all the IDs in the non-volatile memory. So you have to you have to embed this ID into the signatures in order to throw out to throw out all cloud mixture attacks.
Question?
Yes.
So instead, if I understand right, instead of protecting the program flow, the sequence, in fact, you chose to go with the program ID in some shape or form, so that you burn the program ID into the hardware device. So why didn't you choose protecting the sequence instead?
Protecting the sequence?
Yeah, of the instructions so that the replacement cannot happen. Substitution of an instruction from another program.
How would you do that?
You would protect the sequence so the sequence would not be changed.
Yeah, that would mean that you have to load the entire program into the device and then authenticate all the program and then execute it, which will cost a lot of memory space. Okay. If you want to be more, if you want to optimize something in this approach, you have to split all the code by instructions or block of instructions and then assign them one after the other. And this is what we have in Okay, but so if we simply implement this, it will certainly be secure, but it's very resource consuming because we have to verify a signature for each instruction or block of instructions. So it's extremely consuming task. So what we're going to do is actually to rely on something which is a little bit different from RSA signatures, which is an RSA signature screening technique, which was proposed by Belar and other people. And actually, in the RSA screening verification, it allows you to verify that a given set of messages or of pairs signature messages are actually valid without having to verify each and every pair individually. So how it works is actually extremely simple. It just uses the fact that RSA is actually a morphism for multiplication, model multiplication. So it's very simple. If you have here say a bunch of messages, and you have the corresponding signatures for some padding function here with obvious notations for the RSA, so that if you want to verify all these signatures, you just multiply all the padded messages together. You multiply all the signatures, and you just verify that the each root of the product of padded messages is equal to the product of the signatures. So it simply uses the homomorphic property of RSA. Actually, it's a kind of difficult to use this in real life because there's been an attack by David and Jean-Sébastien Coron and myself on this. In fact, you could cheat on this verification process by just adding several copies of the same message in the bench of messages. So it's not obvious to know how you could secure this in an optimal way. So Belar proposed actually to refuse to have twice the same message into the set of messages. But what we do is actually we do something else. What we propose is actually to allow that several messages could be identical in the bench of messages, but what we require is that there are at most E-1, where E is the RSA public exponent, identical messages. So it works, the proof, well, it works exactly the same. So you have a set of messages, and you know that at most E-1 messages can be identical in this set of messages, and then the verification is the same, and then it's probably secure.
Question. Since the messages include the instruction number, I'm talking about it's add instructions, but actually executions of the same instruction.
Yes. So we're going to use this RSA screening technique and apply it to our context. So there is a very simple security proof that means that stands in the random oracle model, in which you can prove that if you have an attacker that is given the signatures of a set of messages, and except maybe one of them, at least one of them, and if it comes up with some sigma such that sigma to the e is equal to the product of the padded messages, then you could use this attacker, to extract its fruits, mod n. So meaning under the RSA assumption, you cannot cheat, you cannot create a sigma such that sigma to the e is equal to the product of the padded messages. It's quite easy to prove actually. Okay, so our system is the following. So this is a screening XMP. So it's basically it's very simple. We have two parties communicating here. So the terminal and the XMP, the device. So there are two registers which are called sigma and nu here. So sigma is actually the product of the signatures, and this product is computed by the terminal. So as before, the program is given under the form of a series of blocks of instructions, and if all these blocks are actually signed with their own individual signature, and when the XMP would require some block of instruction or some instruction to the external terminal, at the same time it could multiply the padded instruction together with its program counter and program identifier to this specific new register here, and at the same time the XT would multiply the current signature by the current value of the sigma counter, such that at each and every moment during the execution, if the program is correct, then we should have that nu is equal to sigma to the he, to he. So we're just using exactly the same thing as in RSS screening. So what you're having here is actually the instructions, and having an edge from an instruction to another means that this instruction, for instance, may hand over control to this instruction. So this one can be an if, for instance, because there are two different paths that the control flow could take there. So it's a kind of basic application of what we can do with an RSS screening technique. So, but this is not.
Is it any cheaper than Raymond Williams' signature checking?
One is multiplied, another is one multiplied.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, as soon as you get, you have loops in the program.
Yeah.
So if you have to execute more than e iterations of the same loop, you're going to have more than identical messages, so that the theorem, the security of the screening wouldn't hold anymore. So you have to make sure that actually you're going to flush the values of sigma and nu as soon as you get e-1 identical instructions. So if you're going to execute loops, as soon as you have e-1 identical, e-1 iterations of the loop, you're going to have to trigger a verification, and so that at the verification, actually, you just authenticate all the instructions that have been executed so far. So once you've done that, you can just reset the values of nu and sigma to 1, and you start it all over again. Okay. So you have to make sure that the security applies. You are obliged to make sure that no more than e-1 identical instructions are executed. All right. So if you take, here is the RSA public exponent. So if you take 2, if you're using a Rabin, then it means that every instruction will actually trigger a verification. So it's not optimal in this respect. Sorry?
And equals 3 is not interesting.
E equals 3 is not really interesting because you're going to execute.
So I'm confused here.
Mhm.
Are we validating the trace of the instructions, the -1 instructions, before executing them or after executing them?
We're actually, okay, this is not a secure protocol. It's just the way we can use screening, authenticate the program.
Okay.
All right. But what we do is actually when we need to verify the program, then we verify it and then execute the corresponding instruction at that point in execution. But again, it's not secure because I could still send instructions to the device that tell the device to put the contents of the non-volatile memory to the data port. So we have to. It's not sufficient. It works, but it's not sufficient to ensure security. So what we do is actually to. So it's called the checkout procedure. The procedure by which, if the XMP wants to verify that all the instructions executed so far are correct, it simply queries the value of sigma to the external terminal, and the value of sigma would be returned to it, and then it checks actually the authenticity of all the past signatures, and then refuse continuing or continuous. So this is the checkout procedure. Right. So what I was saying is that actually we have to define a subset of instructions which we call security critical instructions, which are specifically the instructions by which some electrical signal or some information about the data which is processed inside the device some information are given to the external world, or instructions by which someone could modify the contents of the non-volatile memory. So the security critical instructions are, for instance, if I put something in non-volatile memory, or if I put something on the external data port. So this is separation between naive instructions and kind of security critical instructions. So what we do actually here, it's the first example. So what we do is exactly the same thing. We just update the value of these two security registers, nu and sigma, from both sides. And then when we want to execute some security critical instruction, then before doing that, we just trigger a checkout, meaning we're going to query the value of sigma from the external terminal and compare. And if there is a mismatch, then we refuse to continue the execution. Otherwise, we execute the security critical instruction and loop back.
You must imagine that you were saying 2 to the 16 plus 1. You'd actually almost never get to that.
Exactly.
Because of the present.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a straight line. Well, some iteration which, okay, fine, understand.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, of course. If you take something which is a large value for you, then it's very unlikely that you'll ever have to trigger a checkout, an unwanted checkout, because of the fact that you have collected more than E-1 identical instructions. So, but this is not enough, because actually, if you're looking for the value of the program counter, there is some information that could leak out from the device by just monitoring the value of the program counter. So, for instance, it's very easy if you take some secret, say an AES key, which is stored in non-volatile memory, you put it on the operand stack, and then you're going to send to the device a series of ifs, by which, so if simply compares the topmost stack element with 0, and if it is 0 or not, it's going to jump into another location in the program. So it's very easy to discover the value of the key byte or word here, because you just have to decrement it. So if you decrement it and compare it to some constant values, then you're going to jump at some point Okay, I got the data here and I decrement it, and after decrementation I just test if it is 0 or not, and if it is 0 I'm gonna jump somewhere else. Okay, so it's very easy as long as you have as long as the program counter doesn't change much, you're still in this location of the program. So the key byte is not 0. And as soon as it becomes 0, then you're going to jump. Meaning, if you're going to jump. So by simply monitoring the program counter, you can say, you can know some information about what is processed inside.
Two questions. Presumably, there's more effective, efficient ways of getting information out than just outputting the number in unary. But secondly, are you always going to be linking information during normal execution about the values of things, right? Because the program is available in plain text to the external terminal,
Yes.
right? And therefore, the external terminal gets to watch the execution of the program.
Yes, but what the attacker does know is the value of the secret keys which are embedded into the device. And in this one,
but it will be able to see what instructions are being fetched, right?
yeah, exactly.
And therefore,
Except if we simply encrypt the
but if
code instructions.
If you don't encrypt, then the execution flow, the control flow of the program is visible to the external terminal.
Exactly. It's fully
Even a
available.
normal operation as opposed to during attack.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
This is why we have to put the if actually in the set of these security critical instructions, because it's going to leak some information about a key dependent data here. So the if must be considered as a security critical instruction. And this is the difference between an instruction that is leaky, that leaks some information out to the external world about some secret data inside, and data indistinguishable instructions, which are the instruction, for instance, XOR. So you cannot learn anything, if XOR is executed by the device, you cannot learn anything, because from an outsider point of view, you cannot learn anything about the data that are processed by the XOR. There is no way. But of course, if it's an if, or if it's going to put something on the data port, you are going to see something. The execution of the instruction is not naive. It's something that is not data independent.
Presumably something that overflows the operand stack.
Exactly.
It's all relatively similarly defined, but it means to overflow the operand stack.
Exactly. This is
similarly,
important.
this could be one of the reasons why you don't allow the generation of data addresses.
The what? Sorry.
The generation of data addresses into your local RAM. Indirect addressing, because that could cause a problem.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Although you
This
could
is what-
simply redefine the operations to do something else.
Exactly. So if you want to implement this kind of operations, you have to make sure that they are data indistinguishable. Otherwise, if they are not, it's okay, but you have to consider them as being security critical. So we have two instructions, the naive instructions and the security critical instructions.
And you're not concerned about anything like timing attacks?
Yes, we are. Every kind of attacks.
Well, for example, if XORing two different numbers takes different times depending on what the numbers are, you're not concerned with that attack?
Yes, we are.
Really?
Yes, we are going to consider simply that the instruction, that the XOR is actually leaky. It leaks something out. Okay. So if you're executing XOR on two secret data, then something is leaking. Right? So you are going to consider that this instruction, the XOR, is actually a dangerous instruction.
What's an instruction that's not dangerous now?
Any instruction that wouldn't tell anything about what is processed inside. For instance,
Let's take this offline.
okay. If I take a regular XOR that does nothing else that just computing in one single cycle the XOR of two data, then it's data indistinguishable. Because I cannot learn anything about this data from the outside.
And use the same current every time. So
Yes,
you're worried
exactly.
about that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. If you want to consider this, power attacks and everything, you have to
It seems
put
that
all
the
those
criminal is
instructions.
a great position to do that kind of attack because it gets to be able to correlate the activity with actually the instructions being
Absolutely.
So it's much better than if you just have to at a distance. Okay.
Absolutely. And the same thing here for the division instruction. If I want to have a division instruction, and then if I divide by 0, I could have some kind of interaction generated in this case, which would tell me if the data, the divisor, would be a secret data. It would learn. I would learn something from knowing that an interaction has been generated. So it's a leaky instruction. So the security critical instructions of the language so far are these ones. Okay. So what we do now is actually we do exactly the same thing as before, but we're going to trigger checkout each time a security critical instruction is executed, or if we have collected more than E-1 identical instructions. So by doing this, actually, each time we want to modify something in non-volatile memory or execute some leaky instruction on the data, then a checkout is going to be executed. So what we have here is actually, the red points mean here that it's a security critical instruction, and the red circle means that we are triggering a checkout. So here, for instance, we are going to put something on the data port, then a checkout is triggered. Here we have collected identical instructions, so a verification is triggered, and so on. So actually this is quite expensive because it means that each and every time we're going to execute an if, we're going to trigger a checkout, meaning query for a value and then carry out some RSA verification and so on. But in many cases, the if are completely naive, meaning they're just used to modify the control flow over some naive computations, meaning with some fully available data, none with cryptographic material, but with something else, which is completely public. So what we do is actually that we separate the two data inside the device by just setting what we call a privacy bit. So a privacy bit means that you're going to have private data inside the device and non-private data inside the device. So actually, if there is a RAM cell here, I associate to it some privacy bits saying that tells me if the corresponding data is private or not private. So the privacy bits of the non-volatile memory are also non-volatile, and the privacy bit of the random number generator is always set to 1 by definition. So meaning that what's coming from the RNG is always considered as being private data. So the goal of putting privacy bits is simply to differentiate what is a private data and what is not private data inside the device. So executing an instruction has an influence of the value of the privacy bits. So it's a very simple one. Each time I'm going to transfer some data from one location in the device to another location, I'm going to transfer the value of the privacy bit. And at the same time, if I apply some arithmetic instructions, then I adopt the privacy conservative rule that if I'm going to process a XOR, for instance, between two data, I'm going to read in the two topmost stack elements. I'm going to push the result back on the stack. So the rule which we adopt here is that if any of these two operands was private, then the result is going to be private as well. If they were both non-private, then the result is non-private. So it means that as soon as I start computing something with a private data, every resulting variable in the program execution is going to be tagged as being private.
Until the end of time.
Until the end of time. Right. We can add in the instruction set some instruction that declassifies data, meaning that would you could, for instance, reset the privacy bit of the topmost stack element to 0 if you want to do that.
So let me give you an example of the
Mhm.
Imagine that S is secret and X is not, initially. So what we're going to do is X also has, let's say S has 1 bit in it.
Mhm.
What we're going to do is first set X to 0. And then if S is 1, we're going to set X to 1. And then we're going to proceed.
Mhm.
So in the case where S is 0, X will not be secret. So I said by vice versa. In the case where S is 0, X will not be secret.
I didn't get...
Oh,
Okay, sure. Sorry.
I'm just, also. If we look at code that looks like X gets 0, if S of 0, X gets 1.
Yes.
Now, in this case, you're marking X as secret, right? But in this case, if you don't go through this block, you're not marking X as secret, right? And so if you get to this point, and X is 0, then X is not marked as secret.
It's not.
Okay, just checking.
Okay, it's not. But what happens is that actually you're going to manipulate some private data here because S is secret.
Yes.
So when you do that, we're going to trigger a checkout procedure, meaning that you're going to verify all the program until this specific location in the program. We're going to authenticate all previous instructions. Right. So we adopt this rule, and of course the value of the privacy bits evolves over time according to the specific rules given by the instructions. So actually the fact that we have privacy bits means that we can separate the program variables into two different sets of variables. The variables for which we have, which are completely private. So it's kind of, because of this conservative rule, you cannot make a private data non-private at some point during the execution. And on the other side you have data which are completely non-private. For instance, it might be a counter that counts death rounds, which is something completely non-private. Okay, it's something completely public. So what we do is actually we're going to trigger a checkout each and every time we're going to execute a security critical instruction, but on a private data, not on a non-private data. Because it doesn't mean anything to authenticate program when you're manipulating something that is already known to the attacker. Right?
So this is fine for, say, confidentiality of the private data, but it's not helping you with integrity. It's not doing any extra integrity. This is tracing all the reads from private data and all the things that go to it, and so on. It's not keeping track of anything that's about to go to private data.
Yes, because actually the put static which is the instruction by which you're going to store something in non-volatile memory is actually considered as being security critical as well. So each time you're going to write something in non-volatile memory, you're going to verify the code as well.
And your rules you gave earlier do not make I, do not change the status of I at any point, right? The program counter. The program counter is not a bit. And since I is visible outside, then you could imagine during some interval being able to signal information outside, but that won't. Okay, that won't happen. Fine.
So we to abstract away the fact that we have privacy bits, we define a Boolean predicate that tells us if we are going. If the current instruction is actually a security critical instruction, and given the set of current privacy bits, we decide if we're going to trigger checkout or not, depending on the internal security policy. So the protocol is now following, and this is protocol 1, which is completely secure. So it works the same way as before, and the only difference here is that there are some. As soon as I'm going to execute some security critical instruction, and I'm going to do that on given a certain privacy context, I'm going to trigger a checkout. Otherwise, I'm not. So, so for instance, you have here the red circle means, as before, that you're going to trigger a checkout, and the green one means that you simply avoided the checkout because you were doing some security critical instruction on something that is not security critical, on some publicly available data. So this is protocol 1, and actually it is okay. There are a couple of 2 instructions that you can add to the instruction set, but doesn't change anything. Right. So actually, it's easy to extend this protocol to more efficient protocol in which instead of signing each and every instruction, we're going to sign code sections. So actually, in compilation theory, we define basic blocks as being a straight line sequence of jump-free instructions, and it's so the basic blocks of a given program define a control flow graph of this program, and in this graph we have an edge from B0 to B1 when the last instruction B0 may hand over control to the first instruction B1. And okay, so we're going to extend this protocol to a protocol in which we're going to authenticate program sections, code sections, instead of individual instructions. So what a code section is actually a sequence of basic blocks, so that among all the instructions there is no security critical instruction, maybe except as the last instruction in the last basic block. So when you execute the first instruction of the first block, you know you're going to execute all instructions until the last one. So it's known that if you want to compute the basic blocks of a given program, it can be done in almost linear time, and it's the same thing for code sections. So it's very efficiently computed. So here's an example. We have a program, basic blocks, and you compute the code sections. I refer to the paper for details. Yes.
Traditionally, basic blocks are believed to be about 3 instructions long. I don't think your sections are going to be much longer. So it looks like if things are very horrible before, they'll be slightly less horrible afterwards, but still you'll be paying incredible penalties. Or do you have reason to believe the basic blocks are much longer?
No, but it doesn't make any difference, because in code section actually you just put together all basic blocks in which there are no security critical instructions. So even if the basic blocks are small, it doesn't make any difference as long as you have big code sections. So
you expect big code sections?
We expect to have big code sections.
So a security critical instruction is if you do an if within one of these blocks, within one of these control blocks, which are sections which find them, that's not a security critical operation even if it's touching private code, or I'm confused.
No, actually a code section is terminated by a security critical instruction, regardless if this instruction is executed on private or non-private data. Okay. Because that is something that can be different from one program execution to another. Yeah. Right. So a section is statically defined over the program. It's just the collection of basic blocks, and they are chopped at locations where instructions, security critical instructions are. Okay. So it's very easy to extend the protocol by just, instead of authenticating an individual instruction, we're going to authenticate the whole code section. And we do that by just taking all the instructions into the code section and hash them using some iterated hash function here, which is very important that it's an iterated hash function actually. And we're going to sign the result digest of all these instructions. So, and we have still the program identifier and the program counter that now counts code sections instead of instructions. All right. So the protocol is actually a little bit more complicated, but it's basically the same, except that when we're loading a code section, we're going to execute each and every instruction in this code section on the fly. And when we're going to meet some security critical instruction at the end of this section, we're going to authenticate to verify actually the signature of all previous code sections that have been executed. And this is contextually defined by the alert Boolean predicate that we used before. So the difference here is that you see here you have code sections, and then at the end of which you may or may not have triggered a checkout procedure. So here we have a verification because we are processing some private data, and here we have the code section which is putting something on the I/O port, but it is something that is non-private, so you're saving verification here. So this is protocol 2, and actually it can be shown that it's far more efficient to do this than to generate signatures for each and every instruction. So this is the security analysis. I'm not going to enter this part here unless you want to have details, so but we can talk about it later if you will. And actually what we come up with is a well-defined security model in which we modelize the behavior of an attacker willing to access some cryptographic material stored into the non-volatile memory of the device. And actually, so we need to base our analysis on compilation-dependent notions. So, but I'm going to skip all this. So, this is a security proof. In the end, it is actually can be proven secure under the heresy assumption. So in the random oracle model. So in the random oracle model, if heresy is secure, then you cannot basically attack the device. You cannot retrieve information about the keys that are stored in non-volatile memory. So right. So in the end, what we have here is a system by which you can execute programs on the fly, and without having to store them inside the device. And so you could here add some code secrecy if you want to encrypt the code in addition to having signatures in it. And so
under bug patching, you're assuming that the guy who writes the programs controls all the terminals, so that
of course
you can't have some sort of attack where. Okay.
Yes, of course. But then it's computer security. It's not tamper resistance anymore. It becomes a mere question of computer security. But of course, this part has to be secure as well. So we can do a lot of things, different things here, and it depends on the engineering options that we want to have. So there are many. It's a very customizable protocol, and we can modify it in many ways, and while preserving the security proof. And okay, there are a lot of open problems actually still on the theoretical side. And what we would like to do is actually to extend this protocol not only to toy instructions, but to Java's entire bytecode set. And this appears to be feasible. So we're currently working on that. And there are all the problems. So for instance, the fact that we could want to have a code giving the control flow to another code somewhere, so that we could have cooperative applications running at the same time. And of course, there is still the open problem to know if there are faster protocols that meet the same security properties. And that's it.
Question?
Sure.
If you're assuming that the program was written by a good guy because you can sign it, but that the device in which that's actually feeding it into the smart card might be a bad guy, then it would seem like you're putting a real constraint on the programmer as well, because he has to make sure that the execution of his program doesn't reveal anything to the device.
Exactly. What we make sure here is that if the programmer wants to reveal something about private data, he can do so, but only he can do so.
Right.
He's responsible.
But the question is, what kind of techniques can he follow to make sure that he doesn't accidentally do so? Because if he had something that did branches based on secret data, that information would leak out, which means that
he has to be very careful, or he has to have good tools to make sure that this never happens.
Basic program to forget the trigger salaries and stuff.
Yeah.
The biggest practical problem you have seems to be the incredible gap between the hundreds of bytes needed for public key and the single-digit bit count needed for instructions. And it seems to me that if you use cache like on instructions, you will have a much less complicated problem to deal with. And besides, the chip would run cooler. Because anytime you're fetching instruction off chip,
that's what you were saying. Yeah.
You're eating power.
Yeah.
Because the ARM thing was that they don't put cache in to speed up the code, they put cache in to keep the temperature down.
Certainly. The fact that you could simply upload pieces of code into the cache and then authenticate with the current piece of code and then execute it or not, it's basically the first approach that I have, that you could just send-size portions of the code and then cache it. Okay. Actually, this protocol is not optimal for a couple of reasons. The first one is that we're going to verify each and every portion of code, regardless the fact that it's working on private data or not. So even if it's naive code, you're going to check its authenticity anyways. So you're going to lose time on this. And the other one is that you're going to have a cache. It means you're going to dedicate some RAM space to do this, and which is not the case here. Well, you can also cache, of course, the instructions before executing them with these protocols. It's not mandatory, but it's a very natural approach, and
I know it's outside of the model, but I still find myself wanting to consider the issue of what happens if somebody writes bad code that gets signed. It seems it's very difficult to try to correct that.
No, you cannot. You mean if an attacker has access to the signing key.
No. If version 17 is bad and version 18 is released 2 days later and the bad guys stash a copy in their pocket.
Yeah. If any version of any program ever written has a problem, has a security-related exploit.
Yeah.
Yes.
There seems to be no way to expire unless, well, no, you can't even define it. So I see no way of, search can't have a lifetime.
Yeah, that's another issue we've been talking about. Actually, you could, we haven't thought of that very seriously. You could actually keep counters update into the smart card. Count the number of execution of the same program.
So can the counters maintain, can the smart cards maintain non-volatile counters that...
Counters you can keep, but without a power supply.
I understand you can do that, but even then, there's a problem, because then, if you want to do an update, so you have to do an update effectively simultaneously. Many devices, many terminals might be being used by the start, and you've updated this from version 17 to 18, and now you go to another terminal that isn't yet updated, and it says, no, it won't work because I'm on 18 now. So,
This is what I was talking about, like, control.
Yeah, exactly. There is this problem, indeed, of retrocompatibility with older programs, and we haven't thought of that. But it's a good problem. Yeah.
Talked about having some sort of administrative interface that allows you to insert IDs into the card.
Yes, basically the OS. So the OS is located outside of the device, of course, but we can have the OS, routines that just administrative routines that modify the contents of the number of time memory, adding or removing program IDs.
So it would seem like if you wanted to invalidate a program, you could remove its ID simply by running something against
If you are the code sure, then you can do so. If you're not, you won't be able to execute your program on that.
Is there not a middle ground here? When we start out with a mass program smart card that you can't modify, and at the other end we have a smart card that has absolutely no program storage whatsoever.
You're thinking about a hybrid system?
Yes, to a system where your program memory is non-volatile and you load it, and if it needs to be updated, you can load it again. Using authenticated mechanisms, obviously. But instead of continuing to have to fetch instructions from an external store.
The problem you face then is always the same. There is a very strong constraint on the code size.
I believe non-volatile is even a bigger pig than static RAM. I'm not sure.
No,
No? No.
Otherwise, compact flash cards likely work.
static RAM is cheap too.
Let's see. I mean, I pay good money for a 128K keychain, and there are 256 to make, and that's half the size of a little DRAM.
But I think you'll find that isn't static RAM.
Yeah, it's not static dynamic.
No, it's probably compact flash.
Yeah, no, it's flat.
But there are chips out there already with the program stores our compact or flash memory, and you can load 128K of data into them in a heartbeat.
But you'll definitely not be able to execute some very large program at the same time, without having to communicate with the external world. If your program can be embedded into this memory space, then it's fine. But if it's not physical,
You could imagine paging it in big blocks rather than in these little instructions.
yes, but again,
Well, the instruction cache.
But again, you need a cache, and you're going to verify each and every of these blocks, regardless the fact that they're working on critical data or not. And you're going to dedicate some RAM space to do this. I think the most costly part on the smart card chip is definitely the RAM.
I know that there was one VAX made with a cache made of dynamic RAM, so it's possible to have cache made of dynamic.
Oh yeah,
That's CVAX, which means you don't have to pay SRAM prices for things that they for on-chip cache if you know what you're doing.
but SRAM cache will only hold data while it has power.
DRAM cache.
DRAM will only hold data while it has power
And being refreshed. Yeah, that's a
and
cache.
being refreshed.
Yeah, that's a cache.
Whereas flash memory will hold, you can update the chip using an expensive authenticated protocol. But once you've done that, the next, I can put it in my pocket and I can keep it there for weeks with no power being taken at all, and the next time I use it, it doesn't need to be updated because it's current. And if it does need to be updated, it doesn't, then we go through the expensive process again of
Yes. then it's a kind of a hybrid system.
As opposed to the expensive process of validating on the fly.
Exactly. But actually, what I presented here was actually an RSA based. It's based on RSA, but you could base it on max, just a simple max. So hash functions. So maybe they're not as secure as they used to be, but anyway, you could use max and just the Mac verification boils down to a simple comparison between two registers. So it can be done while you are loading the code. So it can be done very efficiently. That's it. You don't need to have a coprocessor to do this.
But it's not fast compared to the time to execute an instruction. I mean, you're talking about having to do it every handful of
Yes, because because of code sections, you can verify a Mac for each code section.
But how do you
in a code section, you have several. It's an entire block of finished by
Right, but how many you're expecting there to be? I think
I don't know. We should do some statistics and try to.
Unless you can average several hundred, which seems unlikely. It seems like
It's incredibly long. The people on the fourth floor here have a lot of numbers on how big a basic block is because they play with them all the time. And top apocryphal number is 3 instructions. Now, these code sets are a bit bigger, but I don't know that much.
Sometimes 5.
Sometimes 5.
That
Okay.
seems reasonable to me.
Can I ask a further question for that?
Sure.
So, I'll let it again if I still don't
Sure. Okay.
So here S is S and X is equal to variables. S is equal to X is something that you're going to try to externally list it. And what you're doing is keeping track of the fact that X is derived from S. And therefore we get marked as secret or since the or private or whatever. And in such a way that ways to try to observe it are going to get statements based upon that what we don't have information now. Now you have this program here.
I know what you're going to say. What you're going to say is
So
that
these two programs clearly do the same thing. And yet they have different values of the private bits.
Exactly, because in this case you're just going to copy the private bit of S into the private bit of X, which is not the case here.
Right.
And if you access X from the outside world, there will be no checkout procedure.
Right.
You're not going to check anything. And
Yeah, right. I mean, even if you try, for example, saying, I'm going to take the program counter for a moment or something, you only have a chance of taking, sort of half the cases. Right? And doing this kind of analysis in general for trying to do information flow is tricky, especially for complex programs, because you have to, in some cases, you have an analysis sort of thing, something out here, and this is somehow based upon something of value. You'd like to be the case, in principle, that maybe you can consider all the companies you're doing right now are going to be market sensitive. It's only because but at some point you'd like to be able to reverse that back, right? You say that things from now on aren't. Now the problem is, if you end up taking this branch, you have to do some operation that's going to be equivalent to marking, and you want to untape the PC. You're going to have to do some operation that's equivalent to changing everything that could have been executed by the other side. And for the grid code to have that procedure calls and whatever, that's, and without address computation and so on, it's maybe not that bad. Then your program will say, yes, work.
I see, yeah.
So, that seems, I believe that's an open area.
Yeah. Actually, it becomes tricky to try to add interesting instructions into the instructions because of these kind of considerations. So yes, this is why the fact that we're trying to extend these results to Java, it's actually a non-trivial task. It's really non-trivial.
And conceivably impossible.
Sorry?
Conceivably impossible.
We like to think that it is feasible. If it in the end it's not possible, we'll see. That's what happens then. but we don't know. So,
It's your assumption that there is program stored in the smart card to do things like interpret Java bytecode? Or are you proposing that your smart card actually executes Java bytecode directly in hardware? If your external code is Java bytecode, does the smart card itself contain the intelligence to interpret Java bytecode?
no, in this case, actually, the microprocessor is Java-based microprocessor, so it can, could in principle execute bytecode Java on the fly.
So you are proposing that the chip itself, microprocessor, executes Java bytecode without a virtual machine.
Exactly, because it's would be more effective, of course, than having a virtual machine. But if you want, you just have an externalized Java virtual machine and send regular instructions to the device. You can actually interpret this externally. You just have to write the code of the Java virtual machine and put it into the terminal.
Get this thing running in the first place.
But now the devices, smart card chips, now they can run Java outcodes on the fly. There's a technology from ST that allows you to switch from regular assembly language to Java bytecode. So one instruction, one cycle. To the question.
Is that your code verified dancing on the screen?
That's the Pi encryption.
Yeah. There's nothing to do with it.
No, but that's well known.
Recognize it. Yeah, it's somehow based on your PhD thesis on mathematics. That's why you recognize it.
Very familiar.
Okay.
But you can decrypt these things.
That's great for Jim and I.
Thank you again.